Bass Edge Radio. You're listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from MegaWare Keelguard Studios.
And here we are, folks. Thanks for joining us for another episode, the June 15 episode of Bass Edge Radio. As always, a big shout out to our partner, MegaWare Keelguard, providing boat owners protection from grinding salt, abrasive sand, and concrete boat ramps. See all the MegaWare boating accessories at keelguard.com. And a reminder, make sure you hit subscribe on that YouTube channel, also any of those other streaming platforms you're using to listen to us here at Bass Edge Radio. For sure, you don't want to miss another episode. Be sure to like it, share it, and comment. Let us know what you think of the program. So be great to hear. Let's get right into it. We're going to break down some of the most recent happenings in the bass and tournament world. Earlier this month on the Sabine, some of the Cajuns might say, the Sabine River over there in Orange, Texas. For me, another fun event to watch. I know a lot of fans aren't big into the low weight game, but man, I think it just shows a whole lot of strategy. Not so much different techniques, but a lot of strategy and mental awareness of these anglers, and it's cool to see them like in a different environment. I've fished a couple of events on the Sabine. I really enjoy the fishery. I love the tidal water aspect that it brings into the game, and the fact that they can travel a long ways. Houston, Clear Lake area, not a big part of this event this year, but a guy that's been to Clear Lake in that Houston area in the past, Brock Mosley, comes out on top. Shout out to Brock. He finished second several times in Elite Series events in the past, but finally got that big win. Two-pronged approach for Brock. Fished close there to Orange, catching some topwater fish early in the morning. Looked like a big, I would say a big, but a marina area, kind of a dugout ditch, canal area where some of these fish were staging or kind of early summer, getting close to some of that deep water stuff as the fish were well into past this post spawn and into the early summer patterns there. But then running over to Taylor's Bayou, pretty big run he was making over there. I think it's about a 40-minute run from Orange, Texas to catch a couple key fish throughout the week as well. But man, that's been a lot of fun to watch. The AOY race, man, heating up after that. I think they've got 3 events left on that Elite Series schedule. Primarily smallmouth fisheries going to St. Clair, Champlain, and Thousand Islands. It's going to be neat to see how the standings shake up as we move north. I really think if you look at like the top 10 right now, kind of typical guys that have done well in the South and or have fished the Elite Series a long time, going to some of these fisheries over and over. Again, we're going to go to those fisheries again with Thousand Islands and Champlain, but a little wrinkle there in that next event at St. Clair. So it'll be neat to see how those shape up. Matty Wong, want to mention, made his first top 10, finished 3rd place over there at the Sabine Elite Series event. Very cool. We're going to have him on today's show, see how he got into that top 10, had a great finish, and y'all want to stay tuned for that. We're going to talk to Matty about all things bassing. The MLF Bass Pro Tour on Cayuga just finished up. Completely amazing smallmouth sight fishing. After the knockout round, it took almost 26 pounds. I think it was 25-15. Kevin Van Dam snuck into that championship round in 10th place, but down to 15th place in that event after the knockout round. One day of fishing, you needed 25 pounds just to crack 15th place. So man, Cayuga on fire. Saw a couple of big largemouths caught, but the big key there was bedding smallmouth. A lot of fun to see. Shout out to Adrian Avina, angler out of Jersey. Adrian's been on tour a long time. First started with FLW Tour probably 12, 13 years ago. It's been a long time, but finally getting that first national win. So congratulations to Adrian Avina. Man, I have been absolutely jamming these last couple weeks. It's been a wild time with my youth fishing event, and down here at Lake Amistad. I think it's my 13th year pro bass camp. It's been a lot of fun. Fishing a little tougher than normal. Still catching a lot of fish. Most boats catching 25, 30 fish a day. Heard reports of some anglers catching 60 to 80 fish a day. We're going to have Dave Mansue coming up in the showcase segment. We're going to be chatting briefly about that process with the pro bass camp, but most importantly, how this technique, the free rig, kind of took over what was going on there at the camp. A whole lot of instructors fishing the free rig, catching a lot of fish with that. Dave is gonna come in with us and kind of break that down in just a few minutes. And you all don't want to miss hearing about it. Everyone hang tight. We're going to return here in just a few minutes, man. Another educational, fun, exciting episode of Bass Edge Radio. Don't go anywhere. This is going to be a good one. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so choose the protection the pros pick. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our patented technology. The MegaWare Keel Guard is made tough and made to stick. Install it yourself in less than an hour, providing the most dependable, most trusted protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Insist on the original Keel Guard the pros have picked for 25 years. MegaWare Keel Guard. Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
All right, here we are, back again right here, Bass Edge Radio. Got my buddy Dave Mansue in that shadow. What's going on, Dave? Former BASS touring professional, guide up there in the Midwest on mostly Table Rock Lake, but Dave will show you around Bull Shoals and a few other great fisheries up there in that area. Dave, welcome to the program, man. Glad you're with us today.
What's happening? Good time, Kurt.
Man, I'm doing real good. I appreciate you stopping your vehicle. I know you're on the way back from a solo pro event over there at Grand Lake, man. Tell me how the conditions are currently up there, mid-June, Midwest. What are you seeing out there, Dave, after spending the day on Grand Lake?
Well, Grand Lake is it's actually at full pull, which is kind of odd for this time of year. They've had a bunch of rain there. It's got a good stain to it in most places. I couldn't figure it out in one day's practice, but I was able to get a small limit today for the tournament, which I was happy to get 5. I do know that some guys are catching them offshore, on the longer points with jigs and Carolina rigs and things of that nature. I just couldn't find them out there, so I stuck a flipping stick in my hand and flipped some bushes and flipped some docks and just had some fun all day.
Very nice. What are you looking at water temps up there? I know you only had one day of practice because you were down here with the pro bass camp at Lake Amistad. Our water temps hitting right around that 79, 80, 81 mark. What are you seeing up there around that Midwest region?
It's the same thing here, Kurt.
Wow.
There's been a bunch of rain. In fact, I drove through a big storm on my way home here. So there's been a bunch of rain. It's kept the water temp down quite a bit. My understanding is Table Rock is just about the same in that high 70s, low 80s range right now. So they haven't quite jumped into the summer pattern and ganged up on some of the structure that we like to find them at this time of year, but they'll get there pretty soon.
And it's interesting how you can have, down here in South Texas, I mean, we've had, 90, 100-degree days already, but water temp's not a whole lot different, but still both of them, particularly Table Rock and Amistad, Highland impoundments. How do you define that? I mean, what's the deal on that? Is it just depth of water, a little bit deeper here at Lake Amistad, or what do you think the differences is since you spent so much time here and there?
Well, for Amistad, you got to remember, it's a highland reservoir.
Yeah.
I mean, you're up. What is your elevation's over 1,100 feet, right?
That's correct.
So,
1144.
Right. So, and you've got all that deep water. Despite the fact it's 50 feet low, you still have a lot of areas there that are 130, 140 feet. So it's going to keep the mean temperature, right there where it needs to be. As far as Table Rock goes, it's also a very deep lake, but they run a lot of water through it. It comes down through Beaver, into Table Rock, and then right on through to Bull Shoals. So that water movement really keeps things pretty cool.
Very good, very good. Man, you've recently spent, like we mentioned already, a couple weeks down here at Lake Amistad. I think this is your 8th or 9th time helping with the Pro Bass Camp down here. I know you've had a lot of great relationships with some of those youth anglers and being able to even guide them up there in Table Rock and kind of help them develop the finer points of their fishing skills. Real quickly, after being involved so long, how do you break down like the development during camp and why it's so important for a serious youth angler to benefit from these styles of programs that are out there? Not just Pro Bass Camp, but you even have your own program up there in the Midwest with the Future. I think it's called Future Anglers. Tell us a little bit about why you think it's so important for these youth anglers to get involved with these programs.
Well, I always try to explain it this way, Kurt. Not everybody's going to be a professional angler. All right, it's just not going to happen. There are people who are going to go into other areas. However, you always want to have a good time out on the water, and what we're aiming for is to make them better anglers. Not necessarily professionals, but make them better anglers. So they spend less time figuring out a pattern. They spend more time catching fish. And a lot of these young anglers are, they're involved in high school teams and grammar school teams and junior divisions and things of that nature. And they want to be competitive. They do want to be competitive while they can. And what we do for them is really shorten that learning curve. When you and I started, we had Bassmaster magazine.
Yeah,
you had to wait a month to get it. You couldn't wait to get it so you could read
maybe 2 months.
Exactly. Now everything is instant. But having the ability to give them hands-on experience out on the water, not just with techniques, but how to read the electronics, how to read mapping, how to look for certain pieces of structure, out there that, to develop that pattern. There's so much that they learn, and you can see them soaking it up. And a lot of times, as you're idling around looking for something, they're pointing it out to you. So it's really cool to see them develop the way they do. And then, of course, a lot of them have gone on to college teams, and we even have a national champion in Noah Skolnick. So,
that's right.
They've all, so many of them have done really well at the high school and college level. And today, with so many colleges offering scholarships, there's another avenue for their parents to kind of lessen the load of the college education. So it's all good, man. It's all good. These kids are phenomenal. You meet these kids, and they're just so much fun. That here I am. I'm 70 years old, but yet we have something that we can relate to, and we have so much fun doing it. I'm dealing with 14-year-olds in a way that I couldn't do it any other way. So it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's age-wise, it's even with the campers. A 12-year-old or an 18-year-old, they're getting along just as well as they were best buddies, just because they have this common interest. So it's really neat to see. I mean, you've seen Lake Amistad go through a lot of different phases through all the years that you've been here, specifically in the early June time frame when this camp is typically running around. And it always seems to be a little bit different. This year, no exception. there was a technique that really started to grasp a lot of instructors, a lot of the campers, that was really effective this year. That was the free rig technique. Dave, I know that you really leaned on it heavily during camp, educated a lot of these youth anglers about the free rig. Wanted to kind of bring that into Bass Edge Radio today on this showcase segment. Break it down for us. Free rigging, what's it all about, and why is it so effective?
Well, so just to back up a second, we try to teach the students as much as we can, but in reality, a student taught me this free rig technique, and it's really it's a very simple technique, but it's so different from anything that the fish see. Basically, what it is, it's a drop shot weight that has an eye. Okay, so you run the line through it, and then you tie on a hook. And in the situation that I was in at Amistad, I was able to get my hands on one of these. In fact, one of the other instructors, was experimenting with it as well, and happened to have a couple of weights, so he gave me one. And it's just a teardrop weight with an eye on it, and you run the line through it. And I really like to use a 4/0 X-point hook. The Hayabusas are great as well, but the 4/0 seems to work really well. Offset worm hook, and basically what you do is you put a bait on it. Now I've seen worms used, crawls, and flukes. You can put just about anything you want on it. It's anything that you have confidence in. What worked really well for me and many others at Amistad last week, or the last couple of weeks, was a fluke. The bass were feeding on bluegill, so anytime they're feeding on bluegill, watermelon red, green pumpkin, fluke works really well. I always dip the tail on it, but you just thread that on the hook, just like you would if you were fishing it on a spinning rod or any other way that you want that you use it. And then what happens is, so this weight is free. It's free. That's why it's called free rig.
Right.
Pretty simple. All right. But what happens is when you throw it out there, all right, and I don't know if I got enough line here in the middle of my truck, but when you throw it out there, the weight hits the bottom, and the bait slowly comes down to the weight. Okay, so it's a whole new presentation to these fish. Many times you don't even feel them pick it up. It's really important to watch your line in this situation, all right? Because many times you don't feel it because it's just falling and they pick it up and they're moving off with it. Okay,
sure.
So you have to really pay attention when you're using this bait. But what you want to do is, if I like to relate it to stroking a jig. Okay, you're going to throw it out there, let it hit the bottom. The bait will come down to the weight, all right?
Okay.
And you're going to lift it like you would a jig. Like when you're stroking a jig. You just lift it up and let it fall. Lift it up and let it fall. And you work it out through the strike zone, okay? Now, if you don't get a bite, throw it out there again. Lift it up, let it fall. But there's one.
So it's like a vertical Carolina rigging.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. It really is, because you've got it up here, the weight's down on the bottom, and here it comes down. It just keeps coming, straight down. It's really effective. We caught, golly, in my boat over the last 2 weeks, there were hundreds of fish caught on this rig.
Very cool.
Both the young men that I had tournament day and on the second session, they caught their keepers on this over grass. So you can catch them on grass, rock. It's a great technique in brush piles. There's so many different ways to use it. But there's a very important factor with this, though. Okay. A lot of people, the instinct is, it's almost like fishing. They think they're fishing a Texas rig, and they feel a fish on there and they snap the hook set. Okay. But you really don't want to do that, because what happens is when you snap that hook set, this weight goes flying back into the fish's face, and a lot of times he'll open his mouth and you'll miss him. Okay,
Okay.
that weight is moving a lot faster than you think it is. What I learned was the proper technique to setting the hook on this particular technique is just like a drop shot or a swim bait. Okay, where you feel it load up and you just kind of pull it into them. You don't want to snap it. You want to pull it into them. All right, and you'll find your success rate is far higher than it is with any other hook set. So
yeah, it's almost like if you had your line wrapped around a piece of brush or something like that, you really got to feel that tension first to really get that line or that hook, the velocity to penetrate into the fish. And maybe the same thing here. You've got to kind of lift that weight up a little bit so that your line is running right toward that bait, so you can get a better hook set in that scenario.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but Kurt, this technique is so effective. I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over how many bites I was getting on this thing, as opposed to, and you know me, I love to throw a Texas rig worm.
Yes.
And yeah, I could get bit on it, but nothing like this. I mean, it's something that they just haven't seen yet. So it makes it that much more effective.
Well, Dave, as you mentioned earlier, that's the one thing I really love about bass fishing is we're always learning, adapting to conditions, techniques. It's an ever-evolving process. So, there's so many sports that you get into, and of course there's some evolution in other sports as well, but I feel like not nearly as dramatic and drastic as they can be in bass fishing. And we're always on a test or on a hunt, and in a scenario, maybe one that we can lean on some experiences in the past, but never exactly like the current experience that we're having. And that's why it's so important to keep an open mind, keep these new techniques of potential, in use and learning and listening to other anglers to learn new things. So, man, it's really cool. Let's talk lastly about this free rig approach in your area of the country, where you see it not just applicable in South Texas around grass, maybe around some bluffs, but if I'm a Midwesterner, how am I going to utilize the free rig out there in some of these fisheries that you constantly fish on a regular basis, particularly in your guide service?
I have to be honest with you. I can't wait to get out on Table Rock and try this technique. Much like Amistad, Table Rock has lots of rock points, lots of bluff walls. Right now, the fish, we're waiting for the fish to get out on those long points. Where we would normally catch them on a jig or a crankbait. I can't wait to try this technique there. I think it's going to be super effective. There's a lot of brush piles that will come into play later on in this month and through July and August. I think I'm really going to put the hammer on them here this week. So
awesome, man.
I'm pretty excited about it.
We're going to look forward to watching some videos and some information you're going to continue to provide out there on the free rig, particularly in that Midwest region. Dave, it's been great having you on the program and it kind of, doing some additional exposure for this deadly technique. Could be a great technique even for these smallmouth fisheries that you're going to see coming up. Every tour goes north. We just saw the Cayuga event there with the MLF BBT. And now you got the Elite Series going north. You've got the Toyota events going north. So I've heard under a lot of breath about this technique in the past, particularly on smallmouth bass. Maybe this year will be the breakout year.
Kurt, I'm fortunate enough. I'm going to join you in New York for another camp.
Absolutely.
So Oneida, look out. Here she comes.
We're coming to free rigging. All right. Man, Dave, any final words for the listeners before we let you go? We're going to get ready to have Matty Wong coming up next, but just want to give you a short time here to just say what you want to say before we move on to our next segment.
Hey, I just want to say I really had a great time the last 2 weeks. Once again, you put on an excellent camp for these kids. The kids there are phenomenal. It's such a great experience. If you can go to that camp, you have an opportunity to go to that camp or the camp in New York. I would strongly recommend it because it's a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot of great things from a lot of great anglers and catch some fish on top of it. So, once again, thank you for letting me participate.
Absolutely. And don't listeners, don't forget Dave Mansue and some of his friends have the Future Cast Academy going on up there in the Midwest as well. You can check it out. They've got a website. I believe, Dave, it's futurecastacademy.com. Is that right?
That's correct. They can check it all out. We have classes coming up all throughout the summer, different patterns. As the seasonal patterns change, the classes change all the way up through November. So check us out on futurecastacademy.com.
A lot of ways to become a better angler for sure. Everybody, we're going to move into the next segment here. Matty Wong in the studio. Man, looking forward to talking to this guy. Fan favorite out there on the Elite Series. Y'all stay tuned. More Bass Edge Radio coming up right after this short break.
Come on, man, let's roll. What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With PowerPole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No face paint or phony fins necessary.
Excessive shock and vibration are two leading causes for premature battery failure. Prolong the life of your batteries with the new MegaWare Battery Guard. The Battery Guard sits under your battery and absorbs excessive vibration and bounce, reducing G-shock by up to 80%. Great for boats or anywhere shock and vibration can damage a battery. The Battery Guard can easily be trimmed to fit virtually any custom shape or battery size. Save money by protecting your batteries. Spend more time on the water and less on maintenance. Find yours at megaware.com.
All right, here we go. Whew, it's been a great show so far, and looking forward to moving into. You see him right here on the program, Matty Wong on Bass Edge Radio. Like I mentioned previously, a fan favorite. First top 10 in the Elite Series, finished third place at the Sabine River. Matty, welcome to Bass Edge Radio.
Oh, thanks, Birdman. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Matty, so we were just talking before. You're on Eastern time. Usually you're on Western. Well, you're all over the place right now, right? But you left Texas. You had a great event there on the Sabine River. Now you're getting ready for some smallmouth action. What's the plan right now? Where are you at? What are you getting ready for?
Well, right now, like you said, I'm out east. I'm up in Ohio right now. It's kind of where I'll base camp for the northern swing. Okay. Tomorrow I head to St. Clair. It'll be my first time fishing St. Clair. So I'm going to go run around, get some pre-practice in, do some idling, and just try to get in a groove of the area, how long it takes to run certain areas and whatnot. Just kind of feel like what zones like kind of fit my vibe, and kind of, just get a feel of the thing. And then the week after that, I'm going to run up to Champlain and kind of do the same thing there. I got a little bit of pre-fishing time on Champlain last year, but it was 50, I don't know, water temp was like in the 40s. It was 30 degrees out and it was horrible. So yeah, looking forward to this next swing. I love smallmouth fishing. It holds a real special place in my heart. But man, these guys can catch them. So I hope I can kind of keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum going, and hopefully carry it to the northern swing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about keeping that ball rolling and momentum that you've created for yourself. As a lot of people know, your origins from Hawaii, but, kind of coming through into the Elite Series via the Bass Nation and through the California West Coast waters. First off, congrats on everything that you've accomplished up to this point. I know that you want more for where you're headed here in the Elite Series, but man, it's been a wild ride for you the last couple of years. It's a lot to soak in. I'm interested to understand, how your West Coast, maybe even your Hawaii origins, your West Coast kind of fishing upbringing a little bit later in life has served you well on the Elite Series over these last, 18, 20 months.
Yeah, for sure. Well, growing up on the island of Oahu, we have one lake, and it's called Lake Wilson. and it's actually fairly. I wouldn't say it's clean at all. I mean, Viz can sometimes be up to 2 feet. There's
Oh
a lot
wow.
of lay downs. So I grew up doing a lot of flipping, a lot of like small jerk baits, a lot of spinner baits, a lot of cranking. So that was kind of in my wheelhouse as a young kid growing up, and then also chasing smallmouth in the streams that we have in Hawaii. And then not until I moved to California, that's where I was really able to understand grass fishing,
Okay.
because we had a certain type of bank grass in Hawaii, but it's different from hydrilla, it's different from punching hyacinth and all that other stuff. And so for me, learning how to fish a tidal fishery where I was able to apply some of my ocean knowledge from inshore game fishing, the ocean in Hawaii growing up, into fishing the California Delta, that helped me tremendously. I learned how to throw a chatterbait, lipless, learn how to punch, learn how to frog, a lot of different techniques that I never even really got to do in Hawaii. And so it
How
was,
old were you? How old were you when you made that transition from Hawaii to the West
I
Coast
was,
to California?
I was 24, about to turn 25.
Okay.
I bought a one-way ticket. I saved up $10,000 and I sent it. Yeah. So
Slinging it. I like that. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, it was hard, man. It was the toughest decision of my life up until that point, and it was everything that I knew was comfortable and familiar. All my friends, all my family, everyone was there, and I told myself, if I never got off the island and really challenged myself, that I would never live myself I wouldn't forgive myself for not really
Sure.
trying. So I'm super grateful for that decision, even though it was terrifying at the time. It's kind of really paid off, and it's funny, kind of spring forward, almost 10 years, winning on the Ouachita River and making it through the Bass Nation. I kind of got that same feeling where it was like, what am I about to do?
What
Agreeing.
is it about these rivers? You talk about a Ouachita. You did great
Yeah,
on the Sabine.
yeah.
Do you have some kind of flavor with these places that just kind of resonate with you?
Well, it's old school bass fishing, man,
It is. It
at its
is.
finest. And I think that's where I excel. I excel in tough fisheries and places where, I'm not staring at my graph, and I think that I've learned to use the new technology, and it took me about a whole season to really kind of get dialed in with it. Because prior, my old Ranger, I had a black and white old Lowrance at the console and like 1 6-inch graph up front that I would just use for water temp and depth. So, it was a big adjustment. So to go and fish fisheries where I know that I can read the bank, I can, establish certain patterns based off of, whether or not it was, what was the forage in the area, what was the seasonal pattern going on, and then to just start running water. And, that's just kind of what I really enjoy. And once you kind of settle in on a certain subtlety of it, things just start to click. And
Right.
I said it on live where it's kind of like this uncontrollable. You get into the zone, and once you get locked into this zone, you feel unstoppable in a way. And
Every thought is the right motion. Every analytical step leads you to greener pastures. Right.
yeah, it's true. And I'll be completely lying if I said it like that happened all the time. And it's a really small. It's really rare to tap into it,
Mm-hmm.
but when you do tap into it, you're pretty unstoppable. And I think,
Euphoria. Yeah.
yeah, it complete euphoria. A lot of
Yeah.
fishermen, I think, tap into it, but don't realize that they're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't realize that they're in that pocket. I come from a background of music as well, and I played saxophone for a living for many years,
Wow.
and so I I relate it to like the rhythm pocket and like of a bassist or a drummer, finding that perfect little pocket, and you can live in this pocket, and it flows through you, and you're able to just to move, freely within the space, but then you're riding in the energy, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, dude. That's
yeah,
deep.
it was cool because we'll talk about baits and some stuff later on, but a lot of the same lures that I used on a Ouachita, I used on the Sabine. and a lot of them I haven't fished since the Ouachita. So it's kind of cool that I was able to, like dust off a couple old baits and
Right.
and put them to work. And it's funny and how it just started to click, and especially when I was able to really like hone in on that one stretch, and it was the winning stretch, man. And
Yeah.
it was felt phenomenal, just the amount of people that reached out to me, and I'm so grateful for the amount of people that support me now. And it was just so humbling, and it felt really good. It felt like a win, even though it was a third place. It totally felt like a win.
Well, it's your best finish to date, and it was a win. I mean, when you get that close, you hear a lot of times the cliche, "When it's your time, it's your time," and there is a strong aspect to that. And just happened to be Brock's time. When you catch a 410 on a top water, it's a big difference. He won by like 213. It could have very easily been another pound and a half, and Winlet comes out of nowhere to win. Who knows? But let's dive back. I kind of went off on a little tangent. You talked about coming into California, your mid-20s, the proverbial jump off the bridge from the island, and you started learning about some grass. How else has that West Coast development? Do you see that small river aspect that now you've seen yourself so successful in the mid part of the country come from your later or mid-20s fishing there in California as well?
I think more so with anything, the tide influence on the Delta.
Okay.
Learning how to fish certain stretches, because you can fish a stretch during low tide or maybe during a slack tide and you're not getting much bites or whatever, but then to recognize when there's motion and flow, to know that those fish are going to start feeding. And so being able to capitalize on those small bite windows and to have the confidence that you're in the right zones and to really stick it out. Because a lot of time guys they'll run through a stretch, they won't get bit, and they're like, they're not here, they're out. But they realize that they just missed the timing by like 20 minutes. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of water flow, and you go right back through where you just fish, and sure enough, they just pull up and they feed. So that was big.
I've been to the Delta a few times, luckily, and I can see that, because although the Delta is huge, vast, Sacramento River opens up into this giant waterway, there's so many small little sloughs, backwaters, little places that you get into and maximize. I see that where you're coming from, and where that could be that developed wheelhouse that you had there on the West Coast, that now you've had those successes and those styles of fisheries, on the Elite Series and in the Federation as well, winning the national championship. So let's kind of talk about that Elite Series. When I don't want to go crazy deep into it, but I think there's some keys that you can bring to the Bass Edge listeners in kind of their evolution into understanding how you maximized a winning stretch. Maybe didn't win the tournament, but how did it all come about?
For sure. Well, let's just rewind a little bit. We'll go back into practice, and practice was brutal on a lot of guys. It was kind of tough on myself. I had found a backwater about 15 miles up the river, and it was like kind of a long idle in. There was a couple really super shallow sandbars that I had to get over, and then into this really, really big, vast kind of backwater slough that had a bunch of laydowns and whatnot. And I would flip, throw a spinnerbait, crank a little bit. But my biggest bite in that slough in practice came on a spinnerbait at the trolling motor. And it was a 2-pounder that ate it right at the trolling motor. And I was off the bank. It was in probably 8 to 10 foot of water. And I was curious, because I was like, all right, well, that was kind of strange.
Like, where did it come from? Why did that occur? Yeah.
So the next day in practice, I was fishing another area that's actually kind of right around the corner from that spot. And again, I was rolling spinnerbait out, like a little bit out deeper. I'd hit the bank a little bit, but then I was rolling it out, and I noticed this one fish. And it was actually like the one fish that I did scope, during the practice, and I fire out to it. I'm like, it kind of looks like a bass. It reacted like a bass. And this place, if you spent too much time scoping, you ended up scoping gar and drum and redfish.
Okay.
And so it was really hard to differentiate. I mean, obviously, when you can tell, like, a lot of times when you see a bass and the way that it reacts, you're like, okay, that's a bass. But sometimes drum will do kind of similar movements and react similar. But either way, spinnerbait again, boom, ate at the trolling motor. It was like a 2 1/4 pounder.
Ding,
So
ding, ding, ding.
fast forward to the tournament. Day one, I shared water with Brandon Polinick. We're buddies, and so it was kind of cool to. I mean, unfortunately, he found the backwater that I was fishing, but we had a good time. I ended up beating him by an ounce back there. I had 6.7, he had 6.6, and then on day two, I knew that I had a better boat draw. I was going to go up in there. I mean, it was plenty enough space. It was probably like, I don't know, 600 yards, 700 yards of really fishable water.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan was, if it wasn't working by 11 o'clock, that I was going to pull the plug. And what happened was I had noticed that there was a tree that was in the middle of the slough, and there was a couple fish set up on it. So I busted out my balsa square bill, and I just start blasting it by the tree. And I look back on a video, and I think it was maybe my 8th cast through the tree. And it was a stop and go retrieve, and I was able to trigger a 3.5 pounder. And that was
a giant there, right?
It was a giant. Yeah, it was my biggest fish that I had caught. I hadn't caught a fish over 2 pounds, all week. And so one, that gave me the confidence because I knew that I was realistically a bite away from making the cut, and because I was sitting in 55th. And so I decided, I don't think I'll be able to call up anything more than 1.25 pounds in that slough, even though I did catch that good one just the previous day and whatnot. You'd catch a lot of cookie cutter 1 pounders. Mm-hmm. So pull the plug, notice that the tide was starting to pull out and there was good flow on the river. And so I fished a stretch that I had caught a small bite. I got like a keeper bite about 50 yards away, and it was a nice little row of deep cypress trees. And so I start flipping the cypress trees, and I pick up a 2 pounder. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, I just cemented a top 50. I just cemented getting paid at least.
It's a big deal. That's a big deal. Right.
Extremely hard to do. A lot of guys are, well, man, there's 100 guys, man. It can't be that hard, dude. It is it's extremely hard. You lose a fish, it hurts you tremendously because every single one of those guys are incredible anglers. And so I remember this one stretch that I had fished in practice, and I caught a couple keepers on it, but I didn't catch anything really substantial. And so my game plan was, let's go and pre-fish. Let's go and investigate this one stretch again. And before I even hit the stretch, I pulled up to it, thinking about those 2 spinnerbait bites that I had. I'm like, you know what? I wonder if there'd be a slightly deeper diving crankbait. And so without even casting, I didn't even make a cast with it in practice. I tied it up and made a cast with my square bill rod, which is a Mega Bass flat side special. And I'm like, ooh, that feels really nice. That's paired up really nice, 16-pound FC Sniper. I blast up there, get a full cast in. I get 3 winds in it. It locks up, and a 3.5 pounder comes jumping out of the water. And I'm like, oh boy.
Please stay on.
Please stay on, And so I get that fish in the boat. It gets out of my hands twice. I finally get it in the boat, and my Marshall's shaking. I'm looking at my Marshall shaking, and I'm like, oh my gosh. 2 casts later, I stick a 2.5. A cast later, I stick a 2 pounder, and I'm like, okay, they're here. Yeah. I go down a little bit further on the stretch. I catch 2 more fish. I catch 1 more fish and they didn't help my bag. And at that moment, I made the decision, okay, I need to get out of here. 1, I don't want people to see me in here. 2, I got to save these fish for tomorrow. So I pulled the plug and I went and fished literally less than 100 yards from the ramp. Gotcha. Just to finish up my day. It was the last 15 minutes of the day. I also noted the time of which I got those bites, because bite windows are extremely important. Whether they're tide or lunar related, those bite windows will stay consistent on the course of a week for the most part. And especially on tidal fisheries that I've found. And so being in line with that bite window on your best stuff is extremely important. And also being able to settle in mentally and know that you're just 1 cast away from hooking a really good fish that's up in that zone that's wanting to feed. Right. And so, that led me into day 3. And Brock told me that I guess his roomie Tyler Rivette saw me in there catch those fish, and so he told Brock, and then I got the call, and I was like, oh dang. But yeah, he was leading it. I told him I'd give it to him for 20 minutes. I wouldn't I wouldn't start from the other end. I'll give it to him. And he's like, yeah, dude, just come on. And right after, like, I know you found those fish too, so we'll rub rails for the rest of the day. And we did that. I ended up losing 2 fish on Saturday that would have helped a little bit. And then Sunday I gave him the same deal, and then I started from the other end this time because it's not like I was in 25th place.
Right.
I was in 4th, 1 fish away, and ended up I caught once I got my limit, it was like a limit for like 7.5 pounds or something. I was pretty stoked, but it was one of those things where I had not fished a spinnerbait on that stretch at all. I had only cranked it and flipped it. And the last morning, the wind had came up a little bit, and it was slightly overcast. And in my head, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is textbook spinnerbait weather." And sure enough, it was literally my first cast with it. And I said, "Oh man, this looks so spinnerbaity." Like I started making up these adjectives, right? And so I'm like, "This is spinnerbaity." And I like flip up there, start rolling it off. And there's all these perpendicular little like pilings under the water, and I click it off of a piling and I just lock up, and this like 3.5 pounder comes out of the water and take her all the way to the boat, get her right next to the boat. And I go to thumb the spool because I could tell she's just trying to dog me, and I wasn't able to thumb it fast enough, and she broke me off.
Oh, bro.
So that one hurt a lot, but
do you think you lost a fish that would have won you the tournament, or just overtaken Clark for second place?
I would have had second for sure.
Yeah.
I would have had second for sure with that fish, because I know Clark had a good one, but I think with that fish, I think it would have put me right there. And then I had 2 other fish on Saturday that, it would have been close.
Yeah.
It would have been real close. And especially if I don't know, if I was a different person if I would have told Brock something else, we would have had a different outcome. But I think for me, I believe in karma. I believe in, being a good sportsman. So it's one of those things, if I was in that position, I'd only would want someone to respect.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is you guys were able to communicate about it, right? I mean, that was the best part of it all. So many sports that's not happening. And even for Brock to say, hey, look, just give me the first swing through the stretch and then we can rub boats all day. It's commendable to him too, right? So commendable to you, number one, for conceding, I guess you might say, or seceding to the person that's in the lead in an area that you're also fishing, yet at the same time, for him to say, hey man, just give me one swing through the area and then it's a free-for-all. I mean, it's both ways. It was a great concept and probably helped if you had have conceded and he didn't say, well, just come in and rub rails, maybe you don't finish third either. Because I feel like you're the kind of guy that would have said, all right, dude, I'll go find some fish somewhere else. Maybe. I don't know.
Well,
how would that have gone down? Tell me if after the fact, right now, how that would have gone down if that had been the conversation.
No, I wouldn't have not. The thing is,
too much at stake, and you're right there.
Yeah. I found those fish fair and square.
Yeah.
Totally
agree.
And so and it's not like I had seen him and pulled in on it, right. I know like Hunter and Kenta saw us in there and they pulled in on the last day, but they respected our water,
Sure.
And no, I'm not gonna back down to someone. I don't care how many years they've been on the Elite Series. I'm not gonna get big dogged by anyone.
Right.
And if I deserve to be on that spot because I've caught good fish there and it's something that I figured out as well, sorry, Bubba, we're just going to have to make this work.
Right.
So,
and you guys did.
We did. Yeah. So, congratulations to Brock. And I'm stoked that he was able to, secure his first win. And, and like the saying goes, when it's your time, it's your time. And, but I still feel like it was a complete win. It was the biggest check I'd ever made in fishing. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Well, look, you in the short time you've been on the Elite Series, you're I'm gonna say you're a fan favorite, dude. When you come up on stage, people light up. I feel like it's the emotion that you provide, yet the sincerity about all of your conversations and the way that you relate to the public is very I don't know, it's catching, dude. It's
thank you.
You got a thing going on. So it's fun to see, and I agree with you that karma will come around. Let's talk about karma a little bit. Let's talk about, you got 3 events left in the 2023 Elite Series schedule, right? How do you you talked earlier about being a musician. You're staying in the spot. You're kind of grooving. You're making some good calls. You're in this euphoria mode. How do you keep that moving into St. Clair, which is the next event?
I think in our sport, like you're speaking, I think with Dave earlier,
Yes.
about the cool thing about our sport is we always have something to learn, and it's always this revolving door of like these new things that are coming out in like different fresh ways. And so with momentum, as much as it is a very real thing, like I'm not discounting the fact that when you have a few good events, it will actually keep pushing you into a space mentally where you feel like you're going to make really good decisions and this is going to happen. But the reality is that, I watched Jason Christie win the classic and then finish like next to dead last on Santee Cooper, literally the next event. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where obviously I would love to just keep the ball rolling. I would love to be able to like take this momentum and run with it, if you will, and keep it with me. But the reality is that we're also going into a whole different region of the country where we're fishing for a different species now, and two, the water is like just giant, and it can be really tough to break down. And so I'm just trying to, unlike last year where on St. Lawrence, I think I was I was instead of hitting a bunch of different areas, I try to settle in on certain zones. And now with a little bit more research and some experience underneath my belt, now it's just, I'm simplifying down my techniques, and I'm not going to, try to, I got 20 rods tied up, but it's still like a little bit more in my mind to be able to simplify, stick to the tried and trues of the things that I'm confident with. So, I'm sitting in 80th in points right now. I need to be in the top 70 to requalify for next year.
Okay.
And I'll just leave it up to God. It's one of those things. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And if it's like, if it's meant to be, and and then great. And then if not, I ain't going anywhere. I'm still going to be in the fishing industry. I love the fishing industry. I love anglers. I love like anyone that shares the same passion. And I'll just figure out how to make it work. But it's just one of those things, if it's supposed to happen and I'm supposed to, stay on the elites for like another year, then, or whatever, then that will be it. But besides that, I'm still going to keep putting out videos on YouTube and still enjoying my life,
But you got plenty, absolutely, and you've got plenty of time to continue to excel as you did on the Sabine. Bottle it up and keep rolling with it. Keep the positive vibes, as I know you always do. So it's cool to watch that. Growing up, you talked about Ouachita, Sabine, being like old school, right? You're like, oh, dude, it's old school fishing. That's like your wheelhouse, right? So. What are those techniques that you utilize? You talk about a little spinner baiting, transition to a little deeper diver crankbait to come up with some really key bites there on the Sabine. What are some of those techniques that Matty Wong likes to lean on, kind of like his favorite summertime go-to, that maybe another Bass Edge listener wants to emulate what Matty Wong's doing out there and has provided success for him?
Well, I think, we're talking about old school and whatnot. I think like some of the things that are really hard to beat are, a jig. It's a confidence bait. It gets big bites. You can throw it around cover, and I think the real key thing was that I was flipping around, fluoro instead of doing braid. Okay. Even though I'd flip braid in other places that maybe was cleaner than the Sabine. It was just because of the pressure. So the amount of fishing pressure that those fish were getting when you have something that's loud like braid going in versus something like fluorocarbon, it's just a little bit more stealth. So I would start off with something like, if you know that fish are in an area, or you've caught some fish in a certain area and they're not biting because of the conditions, let's say the sun's high up and there's like nice little shade lines and whatnot, and there's not a lot of wind going on. It's just being able to like read the conditions is super important. And when it's slack calm and whatnot, I do kind of tend to go to a jig or a Texas rig. Very cool. And then, like when you start to, soon as like the wind starts kicking up, even though maybe you didn't catch them on reaction baits in practice, maybe you were flipping a jig or you were throwing a worm or something like that and just wasn't happening. I think recognizing, and this took me some years to like, and I'm still trying to perfect this and like get better at this, is realizing, okay, something just switched. Yeah, I was catching fish doing this. They shut off. Now what is overcast, and then the wind just came up. As much as we can nail ourselves in the head by watching all the YouTube videos, doing all the research, reading all the magazines about, okay, what do you do in these kind of conditions? It's actually hard to get yourself to commit to changing your technique that you've been catching fish on to something that you're like, I think this is what I should be doing, but then to actually do that and then to implement confidence within it. And so for me, this was one of the baits that I used, and this is the Megabass Z2, and this is a deeper diver. It's a super compact little crankbait, and I switched out those hooks for the Gamakatsu short bend. These are size 6s there, but I think the rod that, you know, and this isn't like their high-end rod, and a lot of people ask me like, well, all the Megabass stuff's really pricey, but I'm like, you know, for the enthusiasts and for the people that really understand the high quality of gear, I think as soon as you pick up a Megabass rod, it will set everything else so far away than anything you've ever felt. And I promise that experience will stay with you. And for me, even using like the Orochi line, which is, I would say, their second tier, you'd have the Levante, then you have the Orochi. This flat side special is a great like medium sized crankbait rod, also for balsa, and so for square bills and whatnot. So that's what I was throwing my balsa bait on, and I was also throwing the Z2 after I would do a couple runs, stop getting bit, pick up another bait, tie on a different bait, and fire out there and get one. So that's another like confidence bait, I would say, especially in the summer when the fish get a little bit more active, the water temps like in the upper 70s into the 80s. Right. If the condition is there, you can also get on a bite. And also there's times, and this was something that I had researched and heard Kevin Short, K Pink, he actually inspired me to burn a balsa bait around on the Ouachita River. And this is something that I learned in one of his seminars where someone asked him a question like, what's your favorite conditions for cranking? And he said, bluebird skies and no wind.
And you're like, what?
I'm like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? As bass fishermen, we're taught to like, okay, it needs to be a little bit of wind, maybe overcast and da-da-da-da. Right. But you're tapping in to an instinctual reaction that a bass cannot help. Mm-hmm. They are genetically predisposed of eating something. If it bounces off of a piece of cover, they're going to trigger and go and eat it, whether they're hungry or not. It's just something that's in them. It's like we know that ice cream or something is not good for us, but if it's in the fridge, we're going to go and we're going to eat that ice cream.
Well, I if I kept tapping on your shoulder, you might let it go for a little while, but eventually you're gonna kick it off, right? Maybe very similar.
Yeah, something so. I mean, and sometimes all it is like the change of an angle in the cast. You know, like I said, I'd hit that tree a whole bunch, but as soon as I changed up the angle, just slight bit, 5-10 degrees, and make a couple more casts, boom, you trigger a fish. Yeah. So I think that's something that's really key for people to try and tune in on and realize that, you know, you don't always have to be reading the book, if you will, on when a fish should be eating something, and know that you can make a fish react. And especially if someone's fishing really slow through an area and you're fishing right behind them, there's ways to make those fish that are there trigger. But then you also have to have the aptitude and realize that you have to change it up too, because as soon as you give them a look, typically after you go through the stretch or the bank or whatever a couple times with that one bait, you know, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 casts, you're going to have to change it up, whether it's color or what I was doing is I would go in between this is the Megabass SV3 spinnerbait. This is a 3/8 ounce. I'll go between this one and then a finesse. It was like a War Eagle finesse with Indiana blades.
That little yeah. I think that's Mike McClellan signature bait.
It's a great bait.
Yeah.
So the thing is with the Megabass blade is you're having a different vibration that's emitting from the bait. So as much as you're throwing a spinnerbait, there's always a different frequency that those fish are going to key in on and they get conditioned to. And same thing when it goes to a crankbait. So that's how I'd switch to the Z2 when they would turn off from the balsa. And if they would turn off from the Z2, I'd go back to the balsa and then maybe change up a color in the balsa. And so that was kind of a key thing. I mean, I'll talk about rod real quick. This is the Deimos. This is the P5 Deimos destroyer line. This is their higher level destroyer line, and I've really come to like this rod a lot when it comes to just being your all around medium heavy, but especially for lighter swim jigs, for spinner baits, even like flipping a light Senko, like a weightless Senko and whatnot. Great rod, and extremely light, extremely sensitive.
I picked up a couple of those Megabass rods, and the balance is amazing. The sensitivity is, when you get a lighter weight rod, not necessarily action, but a lighter weight rod, it just picks up that sensitivity so much. And when you have the balance like the Megabass does, and a lot of other rods do have good balance, but not necessarily, like you said, when you pick up that Megabass rod, it's a different feeling. When you
can take a rod and pair up a light reel like the Shimano.
There you go. That's that balance I was talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
I can throw this all day and not get fatigued at all.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I stayed with Ike a couple times last year, and he's like, "Oh man, let me see one of these things." He picked it up. He says, "Whoa!" He's like, "What the?" He's like flexing it, and he like balances it. He's like, "Dude, these things are light," and he like threw me one of his rods. I'm like, oh my gosh. But for me, it's really important to be able to not be fatigued. And I threw thousands, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of casts, during that week. And I think one of the keys to my success that week was that I was able to make repetitive casts throughout that stretch and get as many reps as I possibly could, just upping my chances. And when you have a rod that's balanced and light and sensitive, you don't fatigue as easy. Yeah. And so I think that's
help make you good, accurate casts. Like you're saying, you're winding through brush, making casts through, different types of cover, and accuracy is really important, especially on a pressured small fishery like the Sabine or many others around the country.
The Sabine, it's funny because as much as fish is small, it's the largest fishery that the elites go to.
Right. It's amazing.
Because you can run 2 hours in each direction and still have time to run, which is absolutely crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
Hank Cherry actually gave me this really cool piece of advice when we were up on Lay Lake. And I asked him, like, what's your 2 cents on Sabine? And he goes, don't spread yourself too thin. Mm-hmm. Pick an area and settle in and practice. Because if you go and run, Houston, go run up the river and go like run to Taylor's or up the Netches, there's not enough time in a day to cover water effectively and to be able to not fish over fish. Right. And to be able to actually kind of figure out a zone.
I feel like the Elite Series has proven, BASS has proven through all the events that they've had there on the Sabine, there's no gold mine anywhere. Believe me, every angler that's been to that place has looked for, and maybe the only one that was early in the time was at Clear Lake over in Houston. But since that time, and I think it was Crete and McClellan kind of exposed that back in the day, it's all been looked at, and there's no big... even Crete and McClellan didn't win. So even the gold mine that was thoughtfully found at one time, it was still, I think that event was won by Faircloth back in Taylor's area, and one of those little offshoots. So it's interesting. The Sabine's really cool. It's a great place. Thanks for breaking that down. We're going to take a breather here for just a moment. Like to thank Bass Pro Shops as the presenting partner of this feature angler spotlight segment of Bass Edge Radio. Bass Pro Shops reminding you that we all live downstream. All right, Matty, we're going to get into a few last questions here on the program. Are Elite Series anglers doing things, or what are the things that they're doing that weekenders aren't, that makes it look like they have a magic sauce? right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is it that you feel like, being that you were, just 2 years ago, a weekend angler? I remember watching a couple of your YouTube videos. It was either a Juan Bass event. You jumped in on Havasu, I think it was, after you won the regional there,
Mhm.
or did really well in the regional to qualify for nationals. And you were talking earlier about being able to adjust. I think you had a tough first day, but you came back with a really strong day two. What is it that now you've come from seeing and being a part of a weekend angler program, maybe, right?
Mhm.
Now seeing these and being a part of that angler group that seems to have a magic sauce.
Yeah.
Is there a sauce? And if so, what
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, it's called bait fuel. Now I'm playing.
Right.
No, I mean, bait fuel is awesome, but I'm saying,
Right.
it's after fishing on the elites this past year and a half. I think it's the thing that sets, and this is what I tell a lot of young kids that aspire to be professional anglers someday, and they think that they, if as long as they do is not enough research, that they can make it. Like doing time on YouTube and doing all the listening to as many things as they can and whatnot.
Right.
I can't stress enough how important it is to spend as much time as you can on the water. And
Yeah.
ever since I was a kid, I was so drawn to it, and I would spend so much time on the water, whether it was the ocean or the lake or in a river, and learning how fish react, learning how fish set up, learning how like certain bite windows happen, learning how like certain forages and what their whole process is. Like, interesting, because there's a lot of people putting out information online about this is what they do, like crayfish spawn twice a year and then
Right.
that's all they do. It's like, no, crayfish spawn year round. On full moons they're marching around, they move. There's certain things that I think that are fallacies in a way, where people get locked in on what they think that fish should be doing or whatnot. And the only way to actually decipher those things is to actually spend time on the water and to investigate. And so for me, spending hours and hours on the delta, spending hours and hours and putting in those reps, I think when I was able to make that step into the elites, I realized that, wow, dude, these are all guys that put their pants on just like me in the morning. And I think with a little bit of luck and a right opportunity, that it's anyone can achieve that goal as long as they have the work ethic and they have the heart and the passion to do it. And so that's why I always encourage anyone from 16 to literally to 70. Like, if that's something that you're truly passionate in, man, like, and that's the coolest thing about our sport, is that you can chase it and you can get it. Randy Pearson, who was the last guy from California to make it on the elites before me through the Bass Nation.
NorCal guy, right?
NorCal guy.
Yeah.
He had his whole other career going, and he wasn't a young guy when he made it on the elites. And so he was able to obtain a goal that a lot of people think is like kind of this untouchable. And I think I like to challenge people to speak truth to your goals and your dreams, because if you're not able to speak to them, then how would you ever expect them to ever happen for you?
Powerful.
Putting things out there and just speaking it. I remember the Ouachita River event. I wrote on my dry erase board. I had like this dry erase board when I had an apartment, and one would be a calendar, one would just be for to-do lists or whatever. But on my calendar, on the nationals, I put win nationals. I'd never been to the Ouachita River before.
Right.
I had never and it was just and on my drive there, I envisioned a trophy buckled up in my passenger seat.
Nice.
And the fact that it happened, and I was able to buckle in that trophy and drive back 24 hours with the help of some of the boys from Arizona, and it gives me chicken skin thinking about it now, man. And I gave this speech when I was on stage, and I said, dreams come true. I'm the proof of that. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't doubt yourself. work hard and it can happen. I'm not saying that it's going to happen right away, but you don't know, and so, that's just something that I got to say. But
Powerful.
and so with fishing the elites, all these guys have that similar passion, and they have that similar understanding that, all this stuff is possible.
Yeah.
With time on the water, now I will say that I'm fishing the cleanest, I'm fishing the strongest that I've ever fished before. I would be able to beat my previous self 2 years ago when it comes to my skills that I've been able to
spank them around, right?
Yeah. And it's because the time on the water, all my casting, it's interesting because I think it was my second event last year, and it was a guy that was that had watched me win on Wachita, and he had seen me like throw a million casts with my right arm. He's like, "Hey man, I got some advice for you," and I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "I noticed you just mainly cast with your right hand. Like, I think that there's like really good opportunity for you to like learn how to cast with your left." Literally after he said that, I spent the next 6 months learning how to cast more efficiently with my left hand. And I still really, really work on casting with my left hand. And now to the point where I feel like, okay, if I need to put it right there, I can put it there with my left hand. Like, I'm coming around a dock, instead of waiting to pass that dock to get a backhand in it, boom, I can get a forehand, left-handed cast down it. And so it's just putting in the repetition, putting in the time. And then there's also certain things that are undescribable. Like I had said before, like holding into that pocket, feeling an energy and being able to like key in on it and then run with it. And certain people have that more than others, and that ability to kind of key into that thing. Like Brandon Polinick, he has the ability to key in on that, understand that and have the confidence around it, and then to execute. And I think that's super important. I've been learning tremendous lessons from one of my roommates, Stetson Blaylock. And Stetson's been on tour for a really long time. He's done the FLWs. He did youth angling. He basically just finished high school and then just went straight into professional angling. And he is a complete animal when it comes to making game day decisions. And it was kind of cool because I shouted him out. I told him, like, when I picked up that one crank that I never fished all practice, and I'm like, dude, I just pulled a Stetson Blaylock. He's like, he'll pull something out of nowhere and be like, this seems kind of like this, and he'll just like tie it on, like throw it out there and catch a 3, and you're like, dude, what the? And so I call him the squid because he finds ways to like squid his way into the
my god
every time. So yeah, Stetson squid Blaylock.
We gotta get that to hang. I like that for him. Stetson the squid Blaylock. Have you told Mercer about that yet?
I need to tell Mercer about it because we need to make this a thing. I got the Fraser brothers calling him Squid. I got so John Kelly I call Pebbles.
Okay.
So Johnny Pebbles calls him the Squid, and so like we're slowly getting it.
But... So does he like it? Is he taking it?
He's fine with it. I mean, nicknames are never ones that you choose,
right,
but it's ones
obviously
that and it's something that you just like. My name is Matthew, and through school, everyone called me Matt. My parents call me Matt. My girlfriend calls me Matt. Everyone calls me Matt. And after in high school, one of my neighbors would pick me up to go surf, and he started calling me Matty Boy. And I'm like, dude, stop. Like, people are going to hear you. And one of my other good friends heard him call me Matty one time. And then he started calling me Matty. I'm like, dude, no, stop. Like, no, like, Matt, dude, come on. No, stop. And it just, from there, just like one person knew me as Matty. The next person knew me as Matty. And it just kind of turned into a thing. And here I am at 35. And now I'm Matty Wong.
Now you're on a podcast with your own name typed in as Matty.
But that's cool. Funny. There's a lot of Matt Wongs in the world, so I wanted to set myself a little bit.
Well, you've definitely done that. All right, let's go to the next thing I wanted to hit on, and that's your experience so far on the Elite Series. You've talked a little bit about what it takes, that magic sauce, time on the water, confidence, self-affirmation, all these, really powerful things, I think, that you've been able and other Elite Series anglers have been able to do to put themselves in position to be successful in this sport. Looking back, hindsight, you win the national championship at Ouachita. Now you're an elite. You go to the Classic. You're an Elite Series pro. In hindsight, what do you wish you could have obtained prior to getting to where you're at now that would have helped your success in this career?
I think the ability to go out and fish a lot of these fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a West Coast angler, you're handicapped by your geography. It's so far of a drive to go to Alabama, to go to even go to Texas.
Sure.
And so, and the fisheries in South Carolina, man, those fish, like we never, like in California, yeah, certain people fish shaky heads for spots and stuff like that, but I never really fished a shaky head. I never understand the power of that darn little thing until I went to South Carolina and started fishing Hartwell, or you go down and fish, like in Lake Murray, or, and then you go up to New York. All these different fisheries have these regional specialties that hold true, whether it's a color or whether it's a seasonal pattern that's so unique and it's kind of like quirky in a way that it doesn't, and it's hard to replicate across the country. Yeah, there's certain things that move laterally. You're going to have stuff that works from coast to coast. Like for me, like a swim bait works coast to coast, certain things, drop shots, coast to coast, Senko. But you're also going to have certain things that really excel in certain regions, whether it's like a color of a jerkbait or it's a cadence of a topwater. And so knowing that, and then also being able to, I think coming from the West Coast, fishing lakes like Castaic, Casitas Lake, Pyramid Lake, the Delta, a lot of clear highland reservoirs, also fishing like dirty rivers that are tidal. I've had a pretty diverse upbringing when it comes to fishing and bass fishing, I should say. And so I think if we had this magic teleportation device and I was able to like pre-fish some of these lakes and get a better understanding of like,
if you knew that you were going to win the national championship a couple years ahead of time,
you'd have
gone to experience more.
I would have went to Florida and like thrown a swimming worm, because I just never thought that a swimming worm would be so effective and they chew that thing. Like I weighed in 19 pounds on my very first elite day in an elite event on St. John's and like top 10 in the first day. And that was on a swimming worm. I didn't eat a swimming worm ever until practice. And I caught a 5 and I was like, oh, maybe they eat this thing. And then I caught another 5. So it's definitely, I wish I had more time to run around and see a lot of these lakes. So that's why I'm trying to do my due diligence now, having some time off, instead of going back to California and like hanging out with my girlfriend, or instead of going back to Hawaii and hanging out with my friends and family. And
she doesn't want to hear you say that.
Yeah. So, I'm taking time. I'm still going back to visit her in a few weeks, but because we do have almost 2 months off. But I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to research and put in the time on these next couple events to really try to requalify next year. And I don't want to look back and say, man, I really wish I went up and I pre-fished, or I really wish I tried harder. I want to be able to look back if everything doesn't roll the way that I want it to roll and be like, hey, I tried my best.
Yeah.
And that's all that I could have done. And maybe this just was like the time, and it was a perfect experience and a great adventure. And now I can look back on it and smile. And so, but then I can also look back and be like, hey, I did all that work and look where it led me. So it's just, you can't beat yourself up if you've put all of your effort into it.
Well, like I said, and I don't think you really look at it short term. You're just going and putting life in front of you and doing what you can do to be the best that Matty Wong can be. Yeah. And that's to mean that whatever happens in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, you already said at the beginning of the year, you're not going anywhere. You're in this thing for the long haul. So you could be practicing right now for a 2031 win on Lake St. Clair. Right? I mean, you just don't know. So that's the cool thing. You kind of tipped off what you're going to do with this time off. You guys, it's mid-June. You've got until the end of July. You talked about going to Lake St. Clair. You're not going to spend quite as much time at home as maybe that you would like, but because you've got ambition, you've got passion, you've got this want to continue to excel in the Elite Series after the Sabine River event. What else will you be doing through this time off? Is this a time to like practice new techniques? I know in the I was just talking with Dave Mansue earlier in this episode about free rigging.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
man, I mean, I know West Coast people have been free rigging for a while.
Yeah,
I talked to some guys up, some friends like up in Idaho. They're like, man, we've been free rigging smallies for like 5, 6, 8 years, and I'm like, dude, well, it's just getting here. So, is this time to practice techniques like that too? You talked a little bit about staying true to what Matty likes to do.
Yeah, obviously, I have the things that I love, but I'm a constant student of the sport,
Sure.
and in life. So whenever I can learn something new and try to like, figure out a nuance of it, I'm going to try and do that. So I'm not that, I've caught fish on a tube. Let's use a tube, for example.
Right.
Caught fish on a tube before. I've snapped the tube. I've done the tube. I've flipped the tube, whatever. But it's something that like, I don't do, like, I don't have one tied on,
Yeah.
When I go up north, that's something that I want to try to implement. And if it's something that I can get a little bit of confidence in, and especially in practice, then I've helped gain a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience in something that might end up being the difference of making a check or not making a check. So yes, obviously I'll stay sharp with like jerk baiting and glide baiting and swim baits and drop shotting and finesse stuff. But then also, taking time and like really kind of dialing in like the hair deal, like throwing, dialing in my spy baits, dialing in, other certain things like a tube and a couple other things. And so I think it's really important that, as much as I want to be back on the beach, having a beer with my friends and just really being able to relax, my job's not done yet. And so, like I said, going to St. Clair for a week, come back, go to Champlain for a week. And then I got a bachelor party up in Idaho. We're going to go do some fly fishing up in the North Fork. So I'm super excited for that. Get to hang out with a bunch of my really close friends. So that's going to be special. And then I fly back to California for 2 weeks to spend time with my girlfriend and a bunch of my good buddies there, and which I'll do some fishing there as well. Cause I feel like even if I take a week off, it starts to slip when it comes to like decisions and then like crisp of cast and cadence. And so, like I said, I feel really sharp right now.
When you're back home, get that whiteboard going again.
Yeah. Win St. Clair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey man, it's been great having you on the show. Any final thoughts for the listeners? Just kind of giving you an opportunity to kind of close out this interview, and what do you got for folks out there?
Well, for one, thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely.
It was a really good time talking with you, man. And, and I like to just encourage anyone out there that, like I said earlier, if you're truly, if tournament fishing is something that you really want to do, and it's something that you're truly passionate in, devote your life to it. I mean, be smart about it. Don't go bankrupt. Don't lose a marriage over it. But there's ways to make compromises, and there's ways to still chase a dream. And whether it's tournament bass fishing or you're just trying to become a better angler, just really put time and effort into, all the subtle things, putting time on the water when you can, and try to be present and try to learn as much as you possibly can. Because there's so many great teachers, and I think I've been really blessed being able to learn from so many good people. And just drawing a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of knowledge from every single person I get to share the water with. So I always try to stay positive. I tell people always keep a little light in your heart, positivity in your mind. And I think that's something that really kind of keeps me in a right mindset. And I think it's really easy for a lot of people to kind of get derailed after losing a big fish. And what that does, it starts like that downward spiral, and then it gets to the point of it hits the chassis, and then the wheels come off. And I think it's really important to, I always repeat it I'll give myself 10 seconds to feel sorry for myself after losing a big fish. And after that, shake it off. It's spilt milk, and what are you going to do from that moment on to get yourself back in that position to catch another good one? And so, I appreciate I'm gonna give myself a little plug here. If you guys have
please do.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I put every single tournament that I do, I vlog, and I do it in a very unique way. I went to film school in Hawaii, and so I'm a storyteller. I love to, I try to make it entertaining and informative to my viewers, and that's Matty Wong Fishing on YouTube. And then I'm pretty daily on my Instagram, which is just Matty_Wong on Instagram. And then I also do an in-depth dive on all of my equipment and baits and everything like that on a separate Instagram page called Capture Fish.
Cool.
And so, so you can also go back and you'll see lengthy videos where I'll go live and talk about everything. And then I usually post those videos up afterwards. And then for you guys that don't do the Instagram, but do the Facebooks, Matty Wong Fishing, go ahead and like that page as well. And send me a message. I truly enjoy, getting back to people because all I want to do is just share the passion that we all have as anglers. And, it's such a cool sport that you can do it when I was 2 years old when I first picked up a rod, and I hope I can fish to the day I die.
Lake Wilson, 2 years old, Matty Wong developing into an Elite Series pro. Pretty amazing. I actually had a chance to fish in Hawaii. I went there about 7 years ago. It was on Kauai. I think. Yeah, right? There's a small lake over there. It's got some peacocks in it.
There's peacocks, there's largemouth, and there's smallmouth on Kauai. There's actually over 30 reservoirs, but a lot of them are private.
Wow,
and a cool little thing is, sorry to cut you off, but there's
great.
Hawaii's very first high school bass fishing team were these kids that I kind of helped kick them off and encourage them. And I actually just found the team a boat to go and compete in the high school world championship up on La Crosse. And so it's pretty cool to see, a group of young teenagers all stoked on fishing, and it just whatever I can do to give back. So it's kind of neat that that help put Hawaii on the map when it comes to bass fishing. So all I can do is just help inspire those kids too.
That is super cool, man. Always an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your passion with us, Matty. Great having you on the program. Man, bottle that up, capture fish in your next 3 events, dude. So have fun with that. We'll hopefully see you again here before the year's out, maybe another episode here of Bass Edge Radio. But until then, everybody stay tuned. I'm going to be back with some final thoughts right after this message.
See you guys.
Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro. Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
Nobody wants to run out of power when they're on the water. There is a better way. Introducing the Charge Marine Power Management Station from PowerPole that does the work of 3 devices: a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system. PowerPole Charge.
All right, man. What an episode. It's been a wild one, man. Very cool. Lots of education as always right here on Bass Edge. Big shout out to Dave Mansue and Matty Wong for being on this episode. Couple final thought kind of takeaways that I've had through the program. First off, with the showcase and Dave Mansue being with us, the free rig. I've had the opportunity to fish this also pretty regularly over the last several weeks. Don't sleep on this technique. A great technique. It takes a little time to get used to. a little time to understand how to get that bait separation so that lure is really kind of, flowing freely out there for a bass to ambush. And really, it's a power finesse technique is the best way I can describe that free rig. You can use big line, big rod, heavy action, medium heavy action stuff, because you're going to really need that power for that rod when you're pulling into those fish. But the free rig, I feel like, is going to be the next drop shot. I kind of wonder a little bit, you talk to anglers about Texas rig fishing. Some anglers, exceptional Texas rig anglers. I remember I've learned a lot of my Texas rigging from Harold Allen. Spent a couple seminars with Harold, seen him on the water several times. A big question for anglers oftentimes is Texas rigging is, do you peg the weight or not peg the weight? And you get different explanations for that. I can see where not pegging the weight from a Texas rigging angler can shade light to what this free rig does. But because of this essentially Rains has a drop shot weight that has the circular kind of swivel that will allow it to not be abrasive to your line and run freely up and down, which is what you need for that free rig. And I see where that came from, potentially some bites with an unpegged sinker at times on the Texas rig. But now with the free rig, it's exaggerated. You can really get a lot of separation from that lure to the weight. So I think everybody should try that. Check it out. You can get you some Rains drop shot weight. The cylindrical weight with the round tie would be perfect. There's a couple other manufacturers out there that make some stuff, but try the free rig. Appreciate Dave bringing that to us. And also thank Dave again for being a part of my youth fishing camp down here at Lake Amistad. Always a great time. And man, it sounds like maybe with the passion of Matty Wong, we can get him involved in a future fishing camp. We'll have to see what his schedule is over the next summer. But man, thanks to him, you can see why Matty's a fan favorite, man. He is just a ton of fun. Really kind of, I don't know, maybe it's from his background a little bit, but he's got this aura, that's a friendly, like, I've known this guy for a long time. I've never talked to the dude before, but I felt like through our interview, we had a connection. And I think he's got that connection with a lot of people, and that's why he's a fan favorite. Just a super nice guy. Hopefully to see Matty continue this momentum that he established on the Sabine River with that top 5 finish, his first Elite Series top 10. He's putting in the homework, and he talked about putting in that homework. If you want to take your fishing to the next level, put that time on the water. Is there a magic sauce? Not really. Not really. The Elite Series anglers put in a lot of work. They have the passion to put in that work. That's why, Matty talks about being off for, 5 or 6 weeks. And although I'm sure he wants to be home, his girlfriend wants him to be home, his family wants to see him and all that stuff. He knows that he's got to put in this time and utilize that passion that he has to establish some quality finishes here in these last 3 events. So it's going to be fun to watch that. Events coming up, man. All kinds of stuff going on in this second half of June. Again, just remember, Bass Edge airs on the 1st and 15th of every month. So obviously, this 15th episode, the BBT at Cayuga just finished. We talked about that in the opening segment. We also talked about the Sabine as well. But coming up, you got a Bassmaster Open out there in Oklahoma on Lake Eufaula. Talked to Dave, kind of getting a little glimpse of the conditions out there. Warm water. Could be an interesting kind of that summer event. So we're going to see how that goes down. Then MLF, the Invitational, is going to be on the Potomac River. I know you're getting a lot of jackpotters out there on this invitational stuff, and it's going to be interesting to see how that boils down, how it affects the angler of the year, the invitational anglers that are in for all 6 events, looking to tap into the Bass Pro Tour. They're going to take those, I believe it's the top 8 in the AOY into the Bass Pro Tour for 2024. So a critical event out here on the Potomac River coming up. I believe it's their 5th of 6 events. That is June 17th through 19th. Then June 22 through 24, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be up at Lake Champlain doing the Toyota Series. Should still be some spawning fish left. We saw them all spawning here at Cayuga just a couple days ago, so I'm imagining up in the upper reaches of New York, still going to be some spawning fish, but probably a lot of post-spawn fish too. I know it's going to be a huge field, over 230 boats, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes down and how Champlain handles the pressure. We saw it last year, guys just demolish them all year long, and there was a lot of pressure on the lake. But lastly, Bass Pro Tour, also going to Lake St. Clair. That is their next event coming up June 24th through the 29th. Guaranteed there'll be a lot of Elite Series anglers probably tuning in to see the conditions as they unfold on the MLF Live. If you're a bass fishing fan, there is plenty of stuff to watch over these next 15 days. So it's gonna be cool to see how everything goes down. I want to thank you for being here for another episode of Bass Edge Radio. Be sure to come back with us on July 1. We'll talk about these events, have some new pros right here on the show. Stay tuned with us all summer. We'll be running live from New York as well. So it should be interesting how everything goes down. That's it. That's the show. See you all next time. Adios.